It's actually really nice that two bongs talking about stress today.
Glad to say that I'm stress-free.
What exactly separates stress to Zest from other books?
Yes. And the inner development is beyond the mind. It's beyond the body. And this book actually is addressing that area. I didn't start writing in order to achieve something for myself. Whether it's wealth, recognition. I have expectation, you have expectation. And we are together as long as we have expectations. This by itself is the root cause of the stress in relationships.
I want the viewers to go buy this book and read through it, so I don't want to give everything away in this podcast. Welcome to another mental health special of the iRonik show. Today we're going to talk about stress, and to better understand stress, we need to break down stress into several types. To talk more about this, today we have Aritra Sarkar on the show today. Aritroda has authored a book, Stress to Zest, where he has broken down stress into several types for our easy understanding. And to explain various type of stress, he has used various real life stories and his analogies. Before you jump onto this podcast, make sure to hit the subscribe button, follow us across social media, and to enjoy the audio version of this podcast, check us on Spotify. Enjoy. It's actually really nice that two bongs talking about stress today.
Yes.
So, how are you? How are you, Aritroda?
Yes, I'm very well. I'm glad to say that I'm stress-free. So,
Wow.
I think whatever
I
I've written in the book, I've probably been able to implement for myself. You know, so yeah, I'm definitely doing well. I'm doing well now. Yes.
I'm glad that you said that you are stress free, because someone who has written uh, quite a thick book on stress management, he needs to be stress free. and
Yes,
it also
absolutely.
and it also states the fact that the book is doing well, so you are stress free.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not so hung up about the outcome. I mean, although, obviously it's a great thing if the book is doing well. I think for me, the biggest joy was really in the process of creating the book, and also in process of interacting with people. That's brought me a lot of joy and a lot of meaning and purpose to my life. The results at the end of the day is just the icing on the cake.
So stress to just
Yes.
what does this mean?
It means transformation of your mental state, of your inner state. Stress is actually just another word for saying that you feel stifled and
Hmm.
suffocated in life, that you're not able to really explore and expand yourself. That actually is the true meaning of stress. No matter how you word it, how people sort of define it in terms of mental health concepts, but at the core, the core essence of stress is suffocation.
Hmm.
Zest is basically when you're free, when you're free from within and you can expand outwards. So that is really the imagery I want to leave you with, to leave your listeners. It's a state of suffocation that one finds themselves in very often. From there, there's a release, and there's an opening up, a flowering of the self into something which is quite remarkable. And at that point, when the flowering happens, when the expansion happens, you feel released. You feel the suffocation is gone.
So just for the audience, like, this is the book that we are talking about today,
Yes.
Stress to Just by Aritra Sarkar, published by Penguin. So I have had lot of Penguin authors on my podcast. So I think I must consult. I must talk to Penguin that whenever you have an author coming up with a book, please send them to the iRonik show.
I'm sure they will.
So so the book is really nice, but the interesting fact was the interface. The
Yes.
first page that you have mentioned, the preface of the book. Please explain what is this cobra and python anaconda you have used. What is this example?
The example is a metaphor. It's a
Yeah.
metaphor which shows that the suffocation that we experience, how that actually suffocates us is what I'm trying
Right.
to sort of get through. And the cobra and the anaconda, essentially what happens is, the cobra kills you with venom, and the anaconda wraps around you and suffocates the life out of you, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I wanted to say that most of the stress management books are essentially that are out there are sort of geared towards tackling this cobra venom, which is out there, by
Okay.
giving you anti venom measures, right? But what happens is that it doesn't make you inherently stronger,
Hmm.
because you can get stung again, right? At the end of the day, I mean, it's a one-time fix. But with the anaconda, what happens is it's unless you're able to, there is no real cure for the anaconda suffocation. You think about it. The only cure is when you become strong from within, so that you're able to not just resist the anaconda's noose, but you're able to even maybe blossom beyond it and transform that noose into something else. That is, of course, the highest level of development is when the noose itself becomes a garland,
Right.
in front of your eyes. So I wanted to actually make this distinction that this book
Hmm.
is really about helping you to counter that noose and to transform it into something very meaningful for you, actually, for your growth.
So today on the internet, we have so many people talking about mental health, right? There are so-called influencers. There are people who do not have the uh, how do I put it? Who do not have the right qualification to even talk about mental health. They go ahead and talk about mental health issues, stress, anxiety, and everything. Then obviously you have the qualified people who are also talking about it, given the platform that they have got. And then there are so many books around mental health, stress, and everything. We have also on the Ironic show also we have had few podcasts where we have gone ahead and talked about mental health and how to deal with it. So having so many content out there on mental health, what exactly? So you answered that to a certain extent, but then again, my question is, what exactly separates stress to Zest from other books?
Yes. At the core, if you understand what the what the main difference is, that
Hmm.
mental health, if you really look at the expression, deals with the health of the mind.
Yeah.
Mind being essentially a part of the brain, effectively, it's part of the brain, and therefore it's in the domain of psychology,
Hmm.
which actually deals with which deals with how the mind works, how the brain works, etc. The thing is that there's something beyond the mind. There's a soul. The soul is something which I believe, which persists for many lifetimes. The mind will persist as long as you're alive. The soul will continue its journey. And that's, if you look at the philosophy of the Vedas, that's exactly what it says, right? That the journey of the soul is eternal. Now, what happens is that in this book, I'm talking about how you can actually develop your soul, develop yourself spiritually within. And therefore, when you develop yourself spiritually, you are able to transcend these problems which affect your mind and your body. You
Hmm.
know, because the spiritual development or the internal development, however you call it, the inner development is beyond the mind. It's beyond the body. You know, and this book actually is addressing that area. So this is an area, if you really think about it, I've is something which, let's say, spiritual gurus do to
Hmm.
some degree, right? To some degree, various scholars and philosophers have tried to do it in the past, but where I have actually made a difference is that I have tried to bridge this gap between psychology and spirituality through this book by focusing on how you can grow yourself from within. And therefore, when you grow yourself from within, everything actually comes into harmony. Your mind, your body, your relationships, everything comes into harmony, and therefore, as a result, you're able to overcome stress. Stress becomes a resultant when the alleviation of stress becomes a byproduct of the process. It is not directly focused at that. It is focused
Hmm.
at something at a higher level of development, higher level of evolution, and The stress management happens as a consequence. That is the main difference.
Uh, then the next question would be, why not write about overall mental health? I mean, when I say overall mental health, it could be depression, anxiety, panic attacks, obviously stress, and there are so many things, right? Why only write about stress and focus on stress management?
The main reason is that you see, stress, you have to target certain problems in a very
Hmm.
focused way. Now, each of the problems that you mentioned, they are separate in itself. Depression
Right.
and anxiety are very broad level problems. And they are essentially emotional responses to certain things that you experience in your life,
Hmm.
certain things that you feel, right? Stress is more focused. Actually, that is the main point. Stress actually has a very, I've looked at it, has a very specific, has a more specific meaning than a lot of these other
Hmm.
issues.
Hmm.
And it is something which people experience on a day-to-day life as well. It is also not something which is impossible to fix, and which will necessarily, take years and years to fix. It can be fixed fairly quickly. So I wanted to tackle something which affects people on a day-to-day basis. And the anxiety, depression that you talked about, these are all coming for various reasons,
Hmm.
and there is actually no point in doing a one book entirely on anxiety or depression or panic attacks,
Hmm. Hmm.
because they could be coming from various reasons and you have to plot all those different reasons. So it's better to look at a specific narrow problem, and try to solve it, then something which is so broad that you need like maybe to break it up into many multiple problems and statements, right? That was how I kind of looked at it.
Okay. So, in the preface of the book, you have mentioned that book, I mean, this book can be used to understand stress and also use stress to fuel your own growth,
Yes,
right?
yes,
So,
yeah,
why do you say so? I mean, overall, it's a collection of all the stories. I mean, I will let you speak about it.
sure.
But when you were researching about this book, when you're talking to so many people, so did you happen to find out some certain stories that you thought that, okay, now I will write it in a manner which can also help people not only understand stress, how they can use stress for now, to, as you mentioned, the cobra and python
Correct,
story,
correct,
that they have the courage to get out of it and then blossom, I mean, then bloom in their
correct,
own very own way.
correct.
So please
So
explain that.
yes. My insight has been essentially because I've personally suffered tremendous stress during the pandemic period, like many
Okay.
people, I'm sure, and my stress was financial and also relationship because, I could not meet my friends, family, and my loved
Mm,
ones for almost 2 years. I couldn't venture out of my house actually,
mm,
for a long time, and also financial stress because I was raising money for my startup. So during that time, I actually experienced this problem myself in a big way, in a multifaceted way. The main thing is that I was able to sort of take the stress that I faced at that point. That was my only way to survive. And to turn it into some kind of a positive energy, which would allow
mm,
me to do some good things. Because what else could I do? I could just simply cry, and simply, you know, uh, wallow in negativity. That
mm.
was one option. But to me, that was not an option because I was simply sinking deeper into a hole. I actually realized that the only respite that I had is if I could convert that negative energy into positive energy, and that's where writing came in for me. Where writing and also writing about the problems that I was facing, and from there actually the journey started. For this particular book, right? So my own experience showed me that the same problem, which you find suffocating, can
Hmm.
actually become a positive thrust for your own growth as well. Because I was able to do it myself, and that's why I wanted to share this secret or this approach in this book for people to kind of learn from.
And how many people did you speak to? I mean, for the overall research and while writing this book?
So the main thing is that I did not really do a survey as such because
Hmm.
I don't have that kind of a skill set, to do a academic survey and then
Great.
sort of follow that procedure. But what I did was I had a podcast as well around that time. So it was basically called Life Lessons in the Time of Corona, And so over there, I would take one of these topics and I would basically narrate a story. And so I had a lot of people
Okay.
interacting, hundreds of people interacting at
Hmm.
that point of time. And that's when I sort of, discovered some patterns, that were coming out, right? And the patterns that I discovered were that there were certain stressors which were affecting a lot of people, irrespective of their, where they are. So I was able to sort of then identify those stressors, and but most of them, and also there was a pattern of how the stressors were affecting people as well, how they were, but no one really knew how to get out of it either. You know, that was the main dilemma. So I was able to, what I was doing is that when I actually started writing the stories, then, a lot of these experiences and these characters, these people that I spoke to, they turned into characters in the stories. Let's put
Uh-huh.
it this way.
Wow.
And, in invisible ways, because, when you start writing fiction, when you write
Hmm.
stories, then you don't really have control. It is almost like you become a mouthpiece for a higher power,
Yeah.
and you are no longer the one actually doing the writing. You're a medium through which someone else is doing the writing. That's what I feel. You know, it's the writing is nothing but an example of possession in a manner of speaking. So
Uh, are you spiritual?
yes, I am. Well, I mean, again, it's a loaded word. I will
Yeah.
say that I do believe in a higher power, in that sense. And I do believe that there are things that are, that one needs to see beyond the physical senses, that there's a world out there,
Hmm.
a realm out there that we can actually connect to in different ways. I think that's my core belief, actually. And there are things that you should leave to uncertainty, to faith, to your guru. I think those are my core beliefs, actually.
Now, coming back to the book again. So, you have mentioned that stress is the apex predator
Yeah.
among all the mental health issues.
Yes. Yes.
Why do you say so?
Actually, it's the one which is affecting people on a day-to-day basis
Hmm. Hmm.
and constantly. That is the main thing. It's a constant worry for people. The other problems, a lot of the other problems, they are huge problems nonetheless. But what happens is that they may not be recurring every day in that manner of speaking.
Hmm.
They might be there for a certain period, then they go away. They come back again, that kind of stuff, right? But stress is may not be huge at all times. In some cases it's huge. And the stories that I presented are always cases where the problem is huge, because I wanted to show the extreme situation
Hmm.
of how it affects people, so that the transformation becomes even more dramatic, right? When you have an extreme situation. But generally, with stress, I mean, everyone pretty much faces some kind of stress on a day-to-day basis.
Hmm.
You know, at some level. I mean, I don't think I've not seen many people today in this day and age, at least in my friends' circles, etc., who really live life without any stress. you know,
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
if there was such a person out there, I think that person would probably be rarer than a Nobel laureate today, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the truth. I mean, the kind of environment that we live in, we are competing every day. I mean, be it your financial stress, be it anything
Yeah.
else. I mean, we are
Yes.
constantly under stress. Now,
Yes.
the best part of the book, that's what I'm coming to. The best of the part of the book was that when we talk about stress, we, in a very generic sense, we say stress.
Yeah.
We don't then break it down,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that what you have done in this book, that you have broken down stress
Yes. Yes. Yes.
into six, seven parts.
Yeah.
I mean, different categories,
Exactly.
if I have to put it that way.
Exactly.
Before I ask you about that, so all the stories that you have, collated for this, book, are there a couple of stories that have touched you the most, or
Yes. Yes. Yes.
which is still lingering in your mind?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the stories is the story called, the story which is linked to professional stress or job stress. which is, I think, lightning in a bottle. That story is quite touching to me personally. And another one is called Redemption Station, which is within a chapter on competitive pressure, which is about the whole obsession with competitive exams, basically, and how it affects people. So that story also I think, was very touching to me. I mean, they are all touching to me, but these two specifically struck a chord at a much deeper level because I faced a lot of these issues growing up, and during my tenure in an organization.
So I would really request if you can, what you have mentioned in the book, break down stress for us in the 7 categories that you have. Uh, so first of all, why have you broken down stress? Really loved it, but why have you broken down stress, and how do you come
So,
to this conclusion?
so the thing is that let's say if you're given a big problem, right? I
Yeah,
mean, if you're given a big problem to solve, stress is a big problem, right? Or any big problem. How do
absolutely.
you approach it? That's the basic question. Forget about stress, any big problem, how do you approach it? I think one of the classical philosophical ways of approaching it is called reductionism, where you break the problem into components,
Right.
and then you try to solve the components, and the components, once you solve it, then the overall solution of the whole thing comes up.
Mhm.
This is a reductionist approach, which is not always very effective, honestly, between you and me. This philosophical approach actually is sort of, in a way, not so, is not emphasized as much in our Vedic tradition in India, because we like to look at the whole and we don't like to really subdivide things, right? By and large. But in this case, we have to consider the fact that we have a modern generation which is very westernized,
Yeah.
right? And they've gone through the classical education system, so they are used to certain things, right? So they're used to things that are, that can be sort of easily digestible in that.
Mm.
So I kept that in mind. So there was a marketing focus as well in that sense, keeping in mind the needs of the younger generation. Plus, I also had the background in technology, and mathematics, so I know how to break down the problems as well. That skill set too. So keeping that in mind, yeah, I mean, I was able to sort of then ask the question is, what is stress for you? And I try to define it the way I saw it. And once I define the problem, then these various subdivisions emerged from there. Because when I broke down stress, I realized that essentially that it's basically internal negativity which is affecting you. And the internal negativity which is affecting you, it's coming to you in two different angles essentially. It either comes to you from outside, or it's generated from within as a response to something, and it's sort of affecting you. So either it's internal stress or it's external stress. And when it's external stress, then the ways in which the external stress is coming in, the various forms, those are in the forms of, like either your parents are putting that pressure on you, or let's say your peer group is putting the pressure on you, or the media, the society, the society is putting the pressure on you, etc., etc. So that's how the whole thing kind of the cookie crumble. Let's put it this way.
So the way you have broken down stress is relationship stress,
Yes,
parental pressure, social pressure, financial stress, health stress, job stress, competitive pressure.
correct, correct.
Okay. So sh- should we begin from the first one, relationship stress?
Sure, sure, absolutely.
In relationship stress, you have mentioned something about the biryani band.
Yes, yes. That's the story
Uh,
over here. Yeah.
as yeah, yeah. So as tasty the name is, I am guessing the story is not so tasty in terms of it's about someone's stress. So please explain the overall story and what exactly do you mean by relationship stress?
Yeah. So relationship stress, as I said, it essentially is the stress that you feel, which is being, which is sort of emerging from your partnerships with the
Hmm.
close ones, effectively, and this stress is coming from expectations that you have from,
Right.
about the partner, about how they should behave towards you, about how you should behave towards them. So it's actually based on this theory of relationships being a give and take, and being a contractual
Hmm.
of a contract of some sort. If you really look at it this way, marriage, what is marriage, or what is any, let's say, even let's call it this way, boyfriend girlfriend relationship is basically at the end of the day like a marriage, except
Hmm.
without the official stamp, right? Now, the main thing is that these relationships between the interpersonal relationships, they are based on give and take. Give and take means basically that I have expectations, you have expectations, and we are together as long as we have expectations, right?
Right.
And we can meet our expectations. This by
Hmm.
itself is the root cause of the stress in relationships.
Yeah.
Really, if you look at, let's say, a relationship like your Ramakrishna, Thakur Ramakrishna, who's a god in regarded revered in Bengal,
Hmm.
and his Ma Sharoda, for example, right?
Yes.
If you really see, there was no give and take over there. They were soulmates whose main purpose was to come together for spiritual development, for the ascension. There was no concept of there was no concept of give and take. There was no concept of fulfilling needs or anything like. Everything was organic because they were able to see the hidden needs of each other. You know, they were pure soulmates, right? Now the fact is that the relationships that we are in today,
Hmm.
everywhere in the world, you know, and whether it's love, marriage, whether it's arranged, whatever it is, they're all based on some kind of a expectation of a barter of some sort. And that's where the problem is stemming from. That there needs to be a higher purpose
Hmm.
apart from just simply, remaining for addressing each other's needs.
In today's scenario, right? Let's talk about a very practical scenario. Is it at all possible? First of all, is it at all possible to have a soulmate, to find your so-called soulmate, and then not have expectation in a relationship?
Yeah, absolutely it is. The fact is that the soulmate finds you. You don't find the
Hmm.
soulmate. Fact is that the soulmate is brought to you. That is the point, you know. And how that happens basically is that you have to move and evolve yourself from within. You have to go on the journey, correct?
Hmm.
Yourself. The soulmate then comes along at the end of the day, you know, as part of the journey, right? The question is that you also have to be in a situation where you recognize the person as well, right? So all of that comes into play. But the the fact is that in today's day and age, the basic
Hmm.
enemy that we are fighting with is ourselves. You know, it's ourselves, our lust, basically. That is the main thing that we are actually that we're dealing with. That as long as we have lust, which basically means that we have an attachment to the results of something, you
Hmm.
know, then we'll never be in a process where we will enjoy the process, the journey of life. You know, and therefore we will always be stressed because we'll always have expectations, and we'll always want to, we'll always be worried about, have I fulfilled this expectation, have I not fulfilled the expectation. We'll never be at peace. And this was the whole insight with which I started this story,
Hmm.
the Biryani Band, which is the story in this particular chapter. And it is, just without giving too much away, it's basically about a couple, a young couple in modern day India, who are extremely stressed because of their various
Hmm.
priorities in life, right? But at the core, that their expectations that they have for one another, you know. And it's
Okay.
only when they were able to sort of let go of the expectations and sort of, then they were able to sort of harmonize with one another
Hmm.
and find a higher level in their relationship. That is the whole message of the book.
Now, coming to financial stress, I mean, let's talk in detail about financial stress. I think
Sure.
it's the
Yeah, that's
biggest stress that anyone
correct.
has.
Correct.
Uh, what is financial stress other than, as you mentioned, that even the wealthiest would have, I mean, they would have to look at their, uh, growing valuation and all that. And maybe someone who is middle class, he has financial stress of living a luxurious life, right? Now, someone who is probably lower middle class is surviving, is fighting for the survival, for the basic needs. how do you see financial stress, and how, I mean, if I have to request you to broaden the overall finance, this term financial stress, how would you put that?
So, material objects of fighting, or let's say striving for material
Hmm,
goals, or whether they're tangible or whether they're
hmm,
intangible, that's part and parcel of modern day life, right? So when you're, let's say, trying to get a house, when you're trying to
hmm,
build your career, when you're trying to, let's say, get a medal somewhere, so these have become, some things which society celebrates, and we all have fallen into a rat race
hmm,
effectively, and we strive for these material things, which is fine
hmm,
at the core. It's not that's not the problem. Problem is when our focus shifts from actually the pursuit
hmm.
the focus shifts from the path or the pursuit, what we are trying to get, towards the pleasure that we derive from achieving it. So to give you an idea, let's say I'm an author, right? And what drives me is, let's say to get a literary award, right? Now, I'm day to day, I'm worrying, I'm thinking, okay, why am I not getting the prize? Why am I not getting
Hmm.
the prize? What do I need to do to get the prize?
Right.
I'm also fantasizing about myself actually holding the prize,
Yeah.
celebrating with it, everyone also celebrating me as a result of it. That is where my attachment. My attachment is towards the recognition or the result of actually of achieving the goal. Correct.
Okay.
When I'm attaching myself to the result of the goal, which is the pleasure that I'm getting, right?
Hmm.
I'm deviated from the path, which is the work that I need to do to get there. The work that you need to get there is not work. That is your spiritual journey. You know, that is your path of evolution.
Hmm.
The result is not yours to get. The result or whatever outcome you get is one which is coming to you from the universe, which is a gift, or which is something which you get as a result of your journey. You have no authority over that. So when you shift your focus from the result of what you're trying to achieve
Hmm.
towards the process of what you're achieving, that stress disappears, because you're now committed to actually on a day-to-day basis improving yourself, enhancing your qualities, becoming better, and also finding joy in the process of achievement. So the core of financial stress, actually, the root cause of financial stress is I would say a lust for the outcomes, and
But
this is a
aren't we all working for the outcome in a very
Mhm.
practical manner?
As I said before, as a practical manner, there is nothing wrong in setting a goal,
Hmm.
right? So the goal can be that I want to win a Nobel Prize. Let's say, right, the goal.
Right.
But you think of the goal as a milestone that I have to reach, I have to build myself to that level
Right.
of a Nobel laureate.
Hmm.
So that when I reach that level of capability, then the Nobel Prize will follow. I don't think about getting the Nobel Prize. I think about building myself up as a process so that I can one day get the Nobel Prize, right? But once I've set that milestone,
Hmm.
which basically defines what mountain I'm trying to climb, right? Am I trying to climb the Everest, or am I trying to climb, let's say, Mount Abu, or maybe the hill on the next to my city? I'm defining the mountain that I'm trying to climb. But then
Hmm.
my passion is for the mountaineering. It is not for holding the trophy. This is the main the difference. That then the whole focus must actually fall on improving yourself in the pursuit
Hmm.
of your craft. You know?
Okay. So you were a startup founder before you
Yes.
became an author, right?
Yes.
And before we started the podcast, we were having a discussion about how, I mean, it was also stressful for you. I mean, financially as well.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
can you please help us
Yes.
understand that journey when
Absolutely.
you founded your company MeVero, if I'm not pronouncing it wrong?
Yes.
Then we now today when you're an author.
So what happened was, that when I was founding MeVero, unfortunately,
Hmm.
everyone is oriented in certain ways in terms of their skills and capabilities.
Right.
Correct. So some people are born entrepreneurs and are very good at at, let's say, managing business situations, working
Hmm.
with people. So there's a whole suite of skills and capabilities, and it's tied to a passion that someone has for business, basically, if you think about it, right? So when Ambanis, for example, if you think about it, they are born business people.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
have that quality in them, right? So uh, some things, I believe, like some traits are inborn, like Sachin Tendulkar's batting, for example. You know, it's almost like he was born with a bat in his hand. He
Yeah.
just, and maybe in a different field, if he'd gone to a different field, maybe he would not have excelled to that
Hmm.
extent, right? So I think what happened was, when I went through the entrepreneurship journey, it wasn't my natural calling in terms of what I am really passionate about, what I want to do, but I was focused on achieving a result, which is to get a high valuation for the company,
Hmm.
to make it huge around the world. I was attached to the mission of the company, which was to, I think, which was a philosophical mission. But more importantly, I was actually attached to the result which I wanted to get for the company, which is a huge high valuation.
High
But the
valuation
entire
fundraising.
fundraising, all of that, right? Exactly. But the entire process of building a company is
Hmm.
is hard work, you know.
Right.
And I was simply, that was not my, let's call it this way, it wasn't my natural area of
Hmm.
interest or expertise, unfortunately. For that, I had, there were many managers and, many people who were working there. But unfortunately, as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to do everything yourself.
Right.
You have to be hands-on, right? You cannot be like a babu sitting behind and trying to manage the show. You have to be on the field. You have to learn how to fight, essentially. And unfortunately, that was not my area of interest, also passion. And so, and as a result, because I was not passionate about the process, I was only focused on the result, and naturally, I was stressed. When the result was up, right? To that extent, which I
Hmm.
faced. But when it came to writing, the difference is that I didn't start writing in order to achieve something for
Right.
myself, whether it's wealth, recognition. I actually turned to writing as an outlet to express my own feelings and to sort of heal myself from stress effectively.
Okay.
That's where I took the pen at that point of time, right? So it was mostly therapeutic, and it was simply self-expression,
Hmm.
and there were no expectations involved, and I have always relaxed when I'm writing, whereas I was never relaxed in the corporate sphere, in the business sphere,
Okay.
right? That is the main difference. That when you're relaxed and doing something, it feels like natural to you. That is your passion at the core of it. And when that is happening and you're not attached to any result from there,
Hmm.
then you will never be stressed. Then you'll always be stressed.
So if I have to put it this way, that while in during your stint as an entrepreneur, it was more like the Python was constricting you,
Correct.
and when you started the healing process, which is your writing stuff, it
Yes.
was like you gained that
Yes.
last breath, the last strength, and you just
Yes.
freed yourself from that, and now you
Yes.
have blossomed. So
Absolutely.
am I right putting it that way?
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, you have also mentioned something about parental pressure, which we generally in the society don't talk about, but that's a very practical and very relatable thing to talk
Yes.
about, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because
Absolutely.
we all are born in different ways, and more than
Yeah.
that, we are completely in a different generation than our parents, right?
Absolutely.
Their
Absolutely.
expectation, their understanding of the world is way different than our expectation, our understanding of the world, and what we want to do.
Exactly.
Now, I have spoken this about in many of my past podcasts, that uh, talking about the generation of our parents, right? It was more about survival,
Correct.
uh, building building roof over your head,
Correct. Correct.
getting the necessities done,
Correct.
providing for the family,
Yes.
getting you educated,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Now, with our generation, we have the basics covered. The bases are almost covered for almost everyone. I'm not generalizing. It's a now we are focused on our. I can also say that many of us focus on our spiritual journey. We want to do what gives us happiness. For our parents, it was not an option. That let's go and become. I don't want to work. I will go to the mountain and become a painter. It was not an option for them probably. It's an option for us now. Many of us are choosing to go that way, right? Now I ask you, what exactly is parental pressure? How would you put parental pressure and what it does to the psyche of a kid?
Well, parental pressure is basically nothing but expectations of an earlier generation that are being forced upon the
Yeah,
younger generation, effectively.
right.
You know, so the values of the older generation are
Hmm.
also different from the values of that we have, as you have rightly
Hmm.
said. That exactly what that represents. The change is actually a change in values. You know, and when they thrust the values on you effectively and the younger generation, that creates friction, that creates a lot of
Yes.
stress, because you're deviated from what you feel is your true path in life, true calling in life. And the stress is happening because there's a external pressure from someone in a position of authority. I think that is where the thing is. Parents
Right.
and children are in a asymmetric relationship of power, by and large, everywhere in the world. As in, the parents are in a higher, more authoritative position. So what they say typically has more credibility, has more
Hmm.
weight than what the child wants, right? So then this asymmetry in the power and the authority actually translates into decisions which are perhaps not favorable for the child's long-term interests, you know, because the child would rather experiment and try to
Hmm.
figure out what they want to do, rather than be told that this is what you have to do.
I think the parents of our generation have understood that, and they are, and let's. It's not only about uh, the academics or the career, even relationship choices, right?
Exactly, exactly,
I think the earlier generation was not too open, or because they were not exposed to the outer world like we have exposure because of internet and all those things. Being homosexuality,
exactly.
right? I think a parent of our generation would be more open and acceptable to the fact that their kid could be homosexual, right?
Correct.
And probably the parents of our generation, it could be a completely shock for them, and
Yeah,
they will never be able to accept it.
yeah.
Again, not it's a very generic statement, no, nothing. So parental pressure is obviously something that is tough to deal with, but then how do we deal with it? How do we
Yes.
uh, lower this stress? And it's a joint effort of the parent as well as the child.
So this particular story that I've written over here,
Hmm.
it's set in Denmark basically,
Hmm.
and it shows it's a great divergence in the values between the parents and between the parent and the child,
Hmm.
mother and daughter in this case, and essentially, the mother wants the daughter to be in a certain way, to live her life in a certain way, to form a kind of a prototype of what she believes is a good human being, a good Danish citizen, in that
Hmm.
sense, right? I mean, mind you, the story is set in Denmark where the values are different from India.
Right.
But the concept of the parent creating a model, a mental model in their mind, which the child has to fit into, that concept is very much translates to India as well. Correct. Except
Hmm.
that model is different for Denmark and the model might be different for India. That's the only difference. But otherwise, the mapping of the model remains the same. Now, what I found basically through writing the story, if you read the story carefully, you'll see that there's ultimately a common ground which the
Hmm.
parents and
Hmm.
the child discover. Once they start, communicating in a very open and in a frank way, you know, once they start communicating and they go deeper and deeper into each other's souls, then they discover that there is something which is common between them. There's a common thread which binds the tapestries, which look different. And when you discover that thread, then that is what you need to work. That is the starting point of building the relationship, building an understanding, between one another. Is to find that missing thread, find that common thread which lies between you and your parents. Even the generations might be different, but we
Hmm.
ultimately have the same DNA, at the end of the day, right? So
Right.
there are certain things which are going to be common, you know can we actually find those common things? Can we build on those common things? Then what happens is that both sides start to get in sync. Understanding starts to develop between both the sides, you know and then the pressure eases.
Absolutely. Now, along with, I won't go much deep into it, but along with parental pressure, I think competitive pressure
Yes.
uh, at some point would overlap.
I would say it's a little bit different. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually quite different. Competitive pressure, the parental pressure is not happening merely from the point of view of what society wants. The parents'
Mm-hmm.
expectations of a child are sometimes coming from legacy, which is the parents' bloodline of the family, but also their own personal experiences, and maybe something taken from society. So it's kind of like a
Mm-hmm.
mixture, but it's ultimately very personal to the parent,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, that it's coming from them. But competitive pressure is something which a person feels from the environment around them, you know,
Okay.
the general environment, not just peer groups or whatever it is. It's faceless in that sense. It's coming mostly from the media. Maybe social media is a big factor here,
Yeah.
from traditional media also, from TV shows, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That you feel, for example, to give you an example, let's say in Bihar, if you're in Bihar, or if you're a teenager in Bihar, then you will face there's a kind of a pressure on you to be an IAS officer.
Yeah.
Right? So similarly,
Absolutely.
if you're Bengali, then yeah, doctor ho by engineer ho is considered to be a kind of a done thing, right? And you therefore there's a rat race to achieve to become professionals in those fields, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to go through university system, you have to go through competitive exams, and the whole pressure of actually the rat race is the pressure of competitive pressure. That's the difference. The rat race pressure is
Mm-hmm.
actually pure competitive pressure. Now, the way out of this is to actually, is to look at it as to look at yourself as saying is that, am I running a rat race, or am I actually running running for my own personal growth? You know, if I'm running for my own personal growth, I set my pace depending on what I feel is
Right.
comfortable to me, right? I set my pace. I decide which race to run. I decide which
Mm-hmm.
place I will run in. I will decide what tempo I will run in. I will decide all this for myself because I know myself. I don't have to be dictated by how fast someone else runs, you know,
Yes.
or how high someone else runs. Because if the tortoise can also defeat the hare at the end of the day, right? So it's not necessary that the person who starts off the block the fastest is going to necessarily win it. You might get tired and burnt out by the end of the day, right? Who knows, right?
Right.
Uh, Either way, what happens is that you need to find your own voice as a human being, your own calling, and that calling and that path might be totally against what others are following.
Yes.
As you have said, you might want to be a painter sitting on the Himalayas, and
Mm.
and painting. Why? Because that gives you meaning in life. And that is a way you express your devotion to your god, or to your guru. If you go to the Himalayas, you paint and you dedicate the painting to if you actually have that mindset, you'll probably be the happiest person in the world. You
Yeah.
don't need anything else apart from that. So that is the message of this entire story. I think is that you had a person in the story Redemption Station in competitive pressure, and this is very valid for India actually, because in India we have a tremendously oppressive competitive examination system.
Yes. Yes.
Tremendously competitive, right? And oppressive. Now, even worse than India, believe it or not, is Japan.
Oh.
Japan, yes. The Japanese competitive system is, I mean, brutal, and they have the highest student suicide rate in the world,
Okay.
actually, because of this. Now, that's why I set the story in
Hmm.
Japan, because I wanted to show an even more extreme version of this competitive pressure. So people from various countries can relate and they'll feel frightened by it. The fact is that you had a student over here whose true calling was actually doing uh, painting manga, manga, the art form. And he did not, he was forced actually to get into, because of the competitive rat race and jobs and the job sphere, he was forced to get into engineering. And he was just not doing well enough to get into the top engineering academies. And so what happened is that he commits suicide, you know, and and after he commits suicide, he's stuck in a limbo, in sort of like this purgatory, where he meets a Buddhist monk who then guides him into realizing uh, what his primary barrier was in life, which made him commit suicide. And then he realizes what this problem was, that he was running a rat race and deviated away from his true calling of uh, manga art. And when he realized that, he woke up and he found the whole thing was a dream. Anyway, so 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 the whole moral of the story is essentially that you have to find your passion and follow it. You know, and you have to follow it with devotion, which is without attachment to the result. You know, you have to follow it for the love of of the craft itself. You know, and when you are actually in that zone, then
Hmm.
no amount of stress, no amount of pressure will touch you. You become basically like a lotus flower. If you see a lotus flower, you pour water, or try to pour water on it, then the water kind of flows away from the lotus flower.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you will achieve that kind of a state. It's in Hindu philosophy, in actually our philosophy of oneness by Sri Haritratna. He calls it the nilipt bhav. You know, and this has been written about in the book called The Purpose of Life, brought out by Fingerprint. But he talks about the state of being, which is where someone is attached to something, to the process, but detached from the outcome, which is exactly the state of being which I was trying to actually portray in this story, that the
Okay.
person finally realizes.
I think you will be the right person, probably to suggest. I mean, give me some idea. So because you have been in that rat race, as you called it, during your
Yes,
valuation, when you are
yes,
looking for valuation fundraising, and you found your true calling in writing,
correct,
right?
correct,
Now, as I told you that I am in job and I am also into doing something podcast where the market is really competitive.
correct.
So, what would be your suggestion for me? What would be your message for me?
My suggestion is firstly, it's like there's a very famous story in in the Puranas called Samudra Manthan. The Samudra Manthan. I'm
Yeah.
sure you might have heard of
Yeah.
Samudra Manthan. Basically, is when the gods and the asuras, they churned the ocean, and they came up with, essentially, in the beginning, they came up with a lot of poison and a lot of
Hmm.
negative stuff, and then eventually the good things started to emerge. The nectar started to emerge over a period of time, right? So actually, the Samudra Manthan is an allegory of introspection. What you need to do, and what everyone needs to do, I think, is we need to go within ourselves
Hmm.
and search within ourselves as to who we are, why are we here. We have to ask the tough questions to ourselves. And during that process, it's very painful. A lot of negative stuff comes out in the beginning, that you will actually then you will kind of say that, oh, I'm a useless person, I have no talent, I have this problem, I have that problem. Only problems will emerge in the beginning, just like in the Samudra Manthan. Only poison and only negative things appear in the beginning. But then, as you go deeper and deeper, you will start uncovering some treasures and gems. You will start realizing what your strengths are, what your opportunities are, and then you will realize what you should be doing. In that sense, the true treasures will lie at the end of your own introspective process. You know, so my suggestion is for anyone, for you, is to actually then really dig deep and ask yourself: is what is my passion? Why am I doing this? Who am I? Why am I here? These questions, if you can ask yourself, and try to get the answers for it, then your future course of action will follow from these questions.
Because I want readers to read this book. You know, I want the viewers to go buy this book and read through it. So I don't want to give everything away.
Sure.
In this podcast, we have discussed about the
Sure.
main 3-4 stress factors that were just for the listeners. I will, you have also mentioned something about job stress, health, obviously health stress.
Health is a big one. Yes.
So that's, and then we have social pressure, right? We
Correct.
touched upon it a bit.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Aritroda, for not only for coming on this podcast, but also putting, so much information in this book. And I think someone had to, take out the, someone had to put out all the negativities that came out of the Samudra Manthan in a book, and then also the positivities. And I
Yes.
think you have done
Absolutely.
that beautifully.
Absolutely.
So congratulations again, Aritroda, and
Thank
thank
you
you
so
again
much. Thank
for
you so
being on the show. It was really nice talking to you, and in the midst, I also tried to gain something from you. So the two of my greatest takeaways from this podcast is first the cobra and the anaconda analogy,
Yes.
and second one was this Samudra Manthan analogy. I
Yes.
think that's a very practical way to put it,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Absolutely. 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 I think the Samudra Manthan is a beautiful story. Again,
Yeah, absolutely.
and you think about the greatness of our
Hmm,
Vedic
hmm.
traditions, of our ancient Indian traditions, where they came up with these concepts in the form of stories, thousands of years ago, and no one has been able to come up with anything more meaningful since then.
Absolutely,
If you really think
absolutely.
about it, right? So, there's everything, almost everything that we need to really know is already been compiled before us, in India. And the Western world doesn't have this benefit,
Hmm,
that's
hmm, hmm.
that's the advantage. They have to create everything after enlightenment, and their messaging comes from the Bible. If you really see a lot of, from the holy books, which also got diluted over a period of time, right? Which, through different messaging. But our ancient Sanskritic Vedic traditions, they were pure in their essence,
Hmm.
originally. Of course, there were different versions of different stories that came out over a period of time, which is fine. But the core truth is still out there, you know, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and our storytelling is absolutely incredible, in the
For
Puranas
sure.
and the
For sure.
Upanishads, So, yeah, so I think, yeah, just going back to some of these stories, I think would
Hmm.
definitely enrich everyone.
Now, if you even apply that to your own life, if you see practically, now,
Yeah,
if someone is going through some mental health issue, what they do, the ideal thing is to go to a therapist.
yeah,
When you go to a therapist, you first, maybe in the first few sessions, you will only splurge out negativity.
yeah,
And once that is out of your system, then the healing process begins.
yes,
So I
yes,
think all these stories have a very, very practical meaning.
yes.
So again, thank you, Aritruda.
Thank you
And
so much
with
for
that,
being
we again look forward to having a great discussion with you. And all the
likewise.
best for your book. And I hope it becomes a bestseller very, very soon.
Thank you so much. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much,
Thank
Aritruda.
you so much. Thank you.